Hey, Cheryl, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Brittany, for having me.
Definitely needed to have you on the show. We love highlighting femtech investors, and we're going to talk about, your own personal investment thesis, but you work at a crowdfunding platform that has been really, really supporting our femtech founders in their fundraising. So I'm really interested in our different kind of discussion we're going to have today around crowdfunding and the use of, the public's dollar for femtech innovation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, equity crowdfunding in particular, or what we like to call crowd investing, retail investing, private investing, whatever you want to call it. Basically, companies allowing their customers and true believers to have a piece of the company, which is pretty awesome.
Yes, let women.
Underrepresented folks
Yeah,
all across, yes.
definitely. Well, let's kick off the interview with talking about your background. So where are you from? What did you study? And how did you end up here?
Yeah, so I'm native New Yorker, born and raised by a single mom who, I think really was forward thinking in making sure that I knew what being a strong woman was like, right? Especially, raising two kids in the inner city and doing it all by herself. And we both went to Harvard. And so she really was able to achieve her goal of and instilling in us that education is the key to success and key to the way out, quite frankly, of
Cheryl's
the
mom, we
situation.
love you.
Right, I know. Shout out. She's a true
Mom.
superstar. But yeah, so I my brother is the doctor now, so he's the golden child and did what he had to do. And then for me, I went to Harvard and majored in economics, not the lawyer my mom expected me to be, but I'm doing what I love, which is great. And so I went into banking and private equity, thinking that I was going to be the CEO of a bank right in the future and be like the first Latina and like be like just rock it. But what I quickly realized that whereas those types of institutions preserve the status quo, fintech and technology in general, which by the way I had no exposure in during college at all. I didn't even know that a non-tech person could be in tech, but fintech in particular was molding the future that we wanted to see. And so I came across Republic through a mentor of mine, also Latina, amazing, it's also in VC. And she actually was working at Republic at the time. And I found out that this was an incredible platform that allowed, especially underrepresented folks who were traditionally overlooked by VC, have access to the public dollars and say, hey, like maybe VC doesn't believe my vision, but everyone can be a VC and utilize their knowledge and expertise and just kind of their belief that this could be a success and put their money in as little as $50, right? And so versus traditional angel investing is like 25K, 50K, so bigger check sizes. And so I loved what I saw. I also saw that this before like Title III to Jobs Act in 2016 finally allowed for non-accredited investors to invest in startups, which is key because 93% of America is non-accredited. So really unlocking an asset class that was mostly for the wealthy to get more rich. And so I saw that, and then it was just we were the gold standard. And so I asked for a job on the spot. I was able to go through an interview process, and I've been at Republic now for about 3 years, which is wild to see. But what I do there is I work with VCs, accelerators, ecosystem players to really educate portfolio companies and other founders, and especially underrepresented founders, to learn about different types of capital. Right, venture isn't the holy grail. Like everyone needs venture. No, because 30% of our companies are bootstrapped, by the way. And so at Republic, and this is their first kind of round of outside capital. But it's really a matter of understanding what's the right capital for the founder at the right time. And so if we can just be an instrument for them, that'd be the best. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about what I do at Republic and what Republic stands for.
Awesome. Before we dig into too much, I do want to let's back up and define some words, because I know we do have some listeners that are new to when she says venture, what is she saying? An adventure? What is she talking about? So a few words that you said that I just want to define real quick for our audience.
Yes.
You were talking about an accredited investor. So an accredited investor, essentially, I know there's like an actual definition, but essentially for our listeners, it means that you have enough wealth that the government says you can be risky with it and make investments. And you have to be an accredited investor in order to make a lot of investments. Until there was that change in the law. What year did that happen?
2016.
2016, there was a change in the law that said, okay, you don't have to be super wealthy in order to put money into something, right? Okay, so there's that. That's like the brief overview, right? Did I miss something or say something?
No, that's great. And it's just it's an awareness and education play right now where people just don't realize that they could invest in their friend's startup, or that they could have invest in the next Uber or Airbnb.
Yes. And now, before 2016, was there crowdfunding platforms, or like everything started?
So there's two types of crowdfunding, right? There's rewards crowdfunding, so like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, but we're equity crowdfunding. Equity crowdfunding did not exist for non-accredited investors until 2016.
Whoa. Okay. So because I was like, I'm pretty sure Kickstarter was around before then, but now I'm understanding that is because you put in money in exchange for like the first product launch or something.
Yeah, the prototype, a perk, a mug, that type of thing. But here you're actually investing in the company. So you're actually getting a piece of the company.
Whoa. And then that is really, really interesting and very different.
Yes.
And so, and then just a few other words that you mentioned that we don't have to get too far into, but you said like a lot of the companies, 30% of the companies on Republic were bootstrapped. So bootstrap means, listeners, that you essentially, it's been funded themselves. The founders put it on their own credit card, their own savings, their own, refinancing of the home or whatever. So they've done it all themselves. That's what bootstrapping typically means. And then when you say venture-backed, venture is essentially like these, Silicon Valley, big pots of money. And, you think Facebook, think Microsoft, big checks and owning pieces of your company. And that's a great route for a bunch of tech companies, but not everybody. And I'm really excited for us to talk about what are some of the barriers specific to women's health and wellness startups getting venture money versus the possibility of them getting money on Republic. So, we've just described it, Republic being this like equity crowdfunding. Do I still say crowdfunding? But equity.
Equity crowdfunding, or crowd investing is easier, or retail investing,
That's, oh my goodness, lots of terms. And so tell us, why is Republic in this crowd, funding way, really great opportunity specifically for femtech?
Yes. So just to answer the first part of your question around why aren't they getting necessarily funding from venture, one is the fact that about 10% of venture are like women, quite frankly, and men don't necessarily see the same problems, or they won't necessarily address them, quite frankly. Just like, oh, it doesn't apply to me. Okay, it must not be a real thing. People still see femtech as a niche market, even though it affects 50% of the population too. So that's the second reason. It's like, they're just like, oh, the opportunity isn't there, which, by the way, venture firms, really, the way that they work is that they get money from larger checkbooks called limited partners, and they're able to take that money and then distribute it in a way that they're expecting 10x returns, right? And so they're looking for companies that have large markets, but then they're falling asleep at the wheel and they're thinking that like femtech isn't one, right? And so that's a real opportunity there, and that's why, as an investor myself, I'm very focused on like that. That's their kind of that is a place where they're not looking. And so that's where I see the opportunity. Mm-hmm. I think the other way is that sometimes, specifically for sex tech, which is part of femtech, that there is a clause in the LPA agreement, so limited partner agreement, that VCs have with their limited partners, that says that you can't invest in vice, which is crazy that sex is vice, even though like most people do it, like it's natural and it's taboo. Yeah, it's just wild to me when so many people do, and that's how we
bodily function.
Exactly, literally body function, human progeny, the human race, all of that. And so technically they will just claim that they can't invest in it because it's a vice. And so it is hard to hear that, but it's also another opportunity, which is why for Republic, the whole point is that this opens up so much it opens up the world so that people around the world can say, oh, okay, like this is a clear opportunity, and VCs are not looking at this. Okay, let's go and invest. There was, especially with some companies in the past, and this is starting to change, but marketing was also a really big issue for femtech companies, right? Because they couldn't necessarily address what they were saying through ads because they were being shadow banned, or, Instagram or Facebook was saying that this was not appropriate, even though it kind of was like, discussing women's menopause, right? Why is that inappropriate, and so and things are starting to slowly change. And so that's one thing for Republic that, where we focus a lot on marketing, right? It's hard not to, just use the traditional Facebook and Instagram, but at the same time, a lot of these companies also have communities. And so what's really great for Republic is the fact that they're able to tap into these communities and say, hey, now you can be a part of our story and be financially aligned with us, so that when we win big, and get an IPO or acquisition, you also will win big.
Woo. Again, this is like so amazing. So many pieces for us to deconstruct here, right? So there's this thing that you said, it's called the vice clause. And I recently learned that that's actually a term, like vice clause. And it's essentially saying like these big pots of money, venture capital firms can't put their money into things like sex, porn, cannabis, gambling. Yeah. So these are all like in this vice thing. And so there's some companies that even if we were able to get the message across to the investor is legally bound. They can't put their money into something that may have to do with sexual wellness. And our listeners know we love to talk about sexual wellness on the show. And so that's definitely part of Femtech. So the vice clause part, and then you were talking about the community part. I love that because I always talk about the Femtech Trifecta. So I have seen that all successful Femtech companies have a great product. They have a community of users, and they have education, whether that is like blogs or, events that they have. And so the fact that Femtech's asset, which is usually they have this community part, and using that to fundraise from it, I really find that fascinating. Can you tell us about some companies that have been successful on Republic?
I'll go in chronological order for you. So the first one that we had that was amazing was Bloomy. It is a sexual health and wellness marketplace, and started by a Latina founder, which I was very excited about. Want to always support my hermanas. And so she actually was able to raise about 175K on the platform. And that was really, a lot of it came through her community, as well as, this final push that generally happens in campaigns where people feel FOMO and they're like, when the campaign's closing down, there's a huge bump in terms of investment. And so we saw that, and she was able to raise a good amount of money that, is able to help her expand her business. The second one is Quim. Which is more around kind of personal care, and it has a kind of CBD component to it. And so that was, they were able to raise about 300K as well. And so that was also another more of a marketing tool for them to engage new customers and kind of bring them into their space. And even just, capitalize on this movement around CBD and all this stuff, and just make sure that people understood, what they're about, and they've been about this for a long time. So they're amazing, and love the founders. And then last but not least is Laura DiCarlo, which is actually live right now. It is a sex toy company, and but really, sex toys is more about sexual wellness, right, and education. And that one is backed by Cara Delevingne, so has an influencer in it. And also Laura DiCarlo herself is a personality, because well, one, she's just absolute rock star, but two, there was a lot of press that came to Laura DiCarlo because in the CES conference that happened, where the sex toy that they have, which is a very advanced sex toy, was nominated for an award, but they kind of stripped it because they said it was a sex toy and therefore it was not qualified. And so having them be rewarded for technological advancement, and yet because it has to do with sex, they took it away. It was something that, to be honest, should not happen in this day and age, and yet it did. And so the press covered that, and it was really more of a push for societal acceptance that this is what we all do, and we need to be pushing the boundaries as to what we can say and talk, and because the more that we talk, the more we can educate each other. And so she's been really kind of a leader in that space, and they've raised about 550K.
Wow, this is a lot of money coming in. Like, what is this?
Yes.
What are the minimum investments for the everyday person to put in?
Yeah, $50, $100, any campaign can set it, but that's generally the case.
Yeah. What kind of ownership does $100 give somebody?
Well, it depends, right? So every company has a certain valuation, especially with companies. They are valued based off of their revenues and potential, and different industries have different valuations. And so um, basically you're able to see what the valuation is of the company, and then based off of that, some back of the envelope math, and make sure that it won't get too much, but it's just enough so that for example, we have a company that is just raised like after a couple months of raising on Republic, now raised from VC, and they were able to just tell their investors, hey, like, you already have a 50% markup on your investment a couple months ago. And so
Wow.
that's pretty cool.
And can you tell the demographic of the people putting money in? Can we tell like it's mostly women investing in these companies, or we don't know that data?
Each founder knows data because we provide the founder with that data at the end of the campaign. And so I'm not necessarily sure for these campaigns what the breakdown was, but I'm assuming it has to do more with
Yeah, I'm assuming that sex tech is a lot of women, because it's female sex tech, right? And
yes.
so a lot of women and supportive men.
Yes.
Uh, you know, can anyone do a campaign on Republic, or is it like exclusive?
So it's actually, it's interesting. We get so many applications a year. So we do want to make sure that it's curated, and we do have a responsibility to our investor base to kind of, provide them with curated best kind of opportunities. So we actually, our acceptance rate is about 3% now, which is kind of crazy. So it is very curated, it is competitive, but it's something where we, we have a holistic approach to it. It's not like the traditional VC was just like, this guy looks like me and therefore I'm gonna give him money, but more around like, hey, let's really take a look at the
due diligence.
fundamentals, the diligence, and go from there. So not anyone can put a campaign up, but that's when for Republic, every time you go, which by the way, there are 100 companies now on the platform at any given time. And so you can really kind of hone in on what you personally want to be investing in, what you want to learn more about, and then put your dollars there.
Wow. And, so we're talking about this interesting trend of, there's these vice clauses for sex tech, but there's also just like these barriers to fundraising for femtech, because we're often pitching to people who have never had the hot flash because of their estrogen dropping, right? They have never worn a maxi pad, right? Like they don't understand the struggle. And so do you think, this is just like, let's just brainstorm for a hot second here. Do you think that making like an equity crowdfunding platform specifically for femtech companies could ever be a thing? And like, would that be a smart thing?
So just creating a platform like that is, there's about 60-70 platforms now that exist that are with equity crowdfunding since the 2016 Title III Jobs Act, right? But the thing that really has to stand out is, one, the compliance factor. So there's a lot of compliance that needs to happen whenever there's a platform like that, because the SEC and FINRA are looking at you, right? So that's one. We have a really strong legal team. We spun out of AngelList, actually. And the general counsel of AngelList is our CEO, right? So like there has always been an emphasis on that. The second thing is about getting to a size where there's exponential growth, right? So we had a slow growth for a while because there's awareness and education piece. But as COVID hit and the world, as we knew it, like, ceased to exist, there were several trends that really helped us get to the million people on the platform, right? So ownership, right? People don't want to just be the consumers, they want to be owners, right? So that's one. Founders are starting to realize that community is a defensible moat and therefore want to engage your community early. Yep. Alternative assets are, NFT, crypto, all that. People are starting to, wise up on that. And then last but not least is diversification of portfolio. So people want to like take their money and not just put in the public markets anymore. They want to do more. So all of those things have allowed us to reach scale, which then in turn helps all of our companies on the platform, right? And so you want to put on companies that will be able to raise accordingly. And so I'll just say, when it comes to building a platform for femtech, that's I think it can exist for sure. And there's nothing really stopping it other than just making sure that it's legal, compliant, and all of that. But then apart from that, it's really about getting to size. So making sure that there's branding and marketing, making sure that you're setting up your founders for success instead of just kind of like launching on the platform and then there's no one to see it, or there's kind of. And then also I think last is the customer journey. Like it's like you can literally download the Republic app right now and just like invest in a startup through Apple Pay. Like it is so simple and easy. Like it's too easy sometimes. So that's the thing where you have to really think about the customer and will they be able to come back to the platform and all of that. But anyway, so I would want to see that happen. I will say that I think it's just more just economies of scale over time that allows for well-established platforms to go ahead and pack.
Well, it sounds like on my list of crazy ideas that I want to pursue, Femtech crowdfunding, I'm going to put a cross through that. And I'm going to say form strong partnership with Republic to form.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of rules and regulate. No. I'll let you do it, but maybe we could work on some kind of specific, page.
Exactly. Well, actually, yes, exactly. That's something we could definitely work on.
Okay, cool. Good. Well, you're also an investor. What are some areas in femtech that you're excited about?
Yeah, so just for those listening, I am an investment partner of the community fund. And I'm also a scout for Lightspeed. So I have, a couple of capital sources, which is great. And so in terms of the verticals I'm interested in femtech, postpartum is one. Mm-hmm. I think it's wild that, you have 8 doctor's appointments and then, during your pregnancy, and then after your pregnancy, it's like 1, if you even make it at all.
And right? It's after 6 weeks. Yeah. I just realized this. My own sister had a baby in November, and the baby had an appointment 2 or 3 days after birth. She had an appointment with her stitched up vagina 6 weeks after. Mm-hmm. I'm like, what?
And there's so much that happens, right? Like people have literally PTSD from going through that, right? And their bodies have gone through everything. And it's just crazy to me that there's no care. Like you became mother, you stop being a woman, right? Which is just how does that happen? Your
needs all of a sudden, right?
Your needs out the window, just about the baby, right? So that to me is just still mind-boggling. There's so much we can do, both in physical health and mental health of the mother, so that we can set up also the babies for success, right? So that's one area that I'm constantly looking at. The second one, obviously, is sexual health and wellness. I did invest in Dame products, which is also sexual sex toys, but also as sexual education. And it has a great community around it, with Dame Labs. And so that was something.
Yeah. That's the Femtech Trifecta, right? Education, community, product. Again and again, we just continue to hear it.
Exactly.
Y'all, I'm just a listener.
So that's the
trends.
Yeah, they've really been able to hone and create a flywheel effect for all 3. So that's something where I love what they do, and they're already making tons of revenue, millions in revenue, and this year they're expected to double, because it's funny, during the pandemic, vibrators were the biggest thing, because we were out here cooped up, and then meanwhile
I just lived through it too. I know. I purchased Lord DiCarlo.
Love it.
So I know what's up.
Exactly. And then versus now hot girl summer, people are actually buying lubes and other things that could help them. So basically it's pandemic proof, which is awesome to see. So there's just different ways that people can embrace their sexuality and sexual health and wellness, increase it. So that's the second one. And then last but not least is menopause. For me, it is so key that people understand what a woman goes through, because I still, to your point before, how do you deal with a hot flash when you're in an executive meeting? Ice cubes, a rag, we're still using archaic methods, right? And then then they're just like I saw my mom go through it too, where like she just shaved her head. She was straight up like, I'm I'm not dealing with this. Like, this is the easiest way I can think of. And it was just, yeah. And it's really like, it's also a mental thing. And so how do we support, this life transition that every single woman goes through, if they reach that age? And so, I think there's a really, really white space there, this gap that I'm very focused on. So those are like my three main areas.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, this has been so much fun. We have two last questions that I really want to dive into with you. The first one is, we have a lot of aspiring founders that are listening. So what's an area in women's health and wellness that you think still needs innovating? And it might be the answers to the question you just said, but
yeah, I know, kind of, right? Like, I mean, I think those are the most fascinating. I feel like there's a lot going on in fertility right now, like actually getting pregnant and but just I think really understanding the journey throughout, right, from pregnancy to postpartum, being a new mom, general wellness is something that if we can kind of help all of these things at once, that'd be great. But I think that also means the entire journey, so including menopause and including just different types of problems that you might have, right? Like I'm actually talking to a company that helps with the thinning hair, right? And fully focused on older women. Like there's so many problems that people don't even realize that are going to be a problem, and yet everyone deals with it and people don't even talk about it. So there's ways to build community, education, and that type of thing. I think that will be helpful just for every woman here.
Definitely. And so if we can consider your favorite topics to be, the postpartum recovery, menopause, and sexual wellness, let me rephrase my question based on those categories. What type of products are you looking for? Are you excited about like CPG, consumer product good? Are you excited about marketplaces? Are you excited about digital health? Tell me more about.
That's a great question. I'm actually excited about digital health and consumer, like a D2C actually, which by the way is becoming, like, for a while there, like everyone loved D2C, and then they all went to retail, and then they're all like actually this might not be the biggest returns that we can invest in, but now it's coming back. And I think there's especially when this entire category hasn't really been innovated on, there's so much we can do in this. So therefore I think that consumers is key, plus digital health, because we're all virtual, or I mean we're going back to it in real life, so a little bit different now, but we are always going to have that technology component. So the more that we can, and the beauty of it is that I can reach anyone, right, and that has internet access and has a phone, and so if we're able to kind of allow for those things to reach people, especially when they need it the most, that'd be great.
Yep. And I mean, speaking of exits and consumers, today we heard that Modern Fertility is getting acquired by Roe for $225 million. And, you would think that fertility is solved. No, it is not solved. No. Companies are still being built. They are still being sold. Fertility is one of the categories of the most acquisitions. And so obviously it's not even done yet, being with, it's not saturated, as we say, right? Not saturated. And Modern Fertility is a direct to consumer. It's a finger prick test that they sold direct to consumer. And, Roe is obviously going to probably add in telehealth and prescriptions and all this stuff. But, so it sounds like you're right in terms of the direct to consumers. It's still strong, especially for women's health. We see that a lot, is that you have to go direct to consumer because there's a lack of billing codes, or like the FDA trajectory is so long because nobody's ever done it before for that category. So you have to literally set standards. So going direct to consumer sometimes is easier. The only issue with that, I'm on my soapbox, I'll finish quickly. My only issue with that is accessibility. Then you start to innovate for the affluent white woman when you go direct to consumer, because she's the only one that can afford it sometimes. And that is just that's a broken system. And it's not the founder's fault necessarily. It's the system's fault, right? Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, soapbox over. I'll step down. Step down.
I love it.
And then our last question for you is, what do you think the femtech industry as a whole needs the most right now in order to be successful?
Needs the most right now in order to be successful. funding funding more women and VCs investing, and like just VCs in general who understand to invest in founders. It's kind of crazy. I've seen some, companies, particularly in the sex tech and just, sex industry, where they've taken predatory capital, and it's just not right if you're giving away like 50% of your company to someone, for a couple million, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And we want to make sure that there are alternative funding sources, like the public, for example, that like where they're able to go and, set the terms and make sure that they are, getting the most out of it, right? There really needs to be founder investor alignment. And so that starts with, investors leaning in, understanding that this is not a niche market, educating themselves on all the problems that we need to solve, and then going and actually, putting their money where their mouth is and investing. So I think that's what needs to happen, is more of the education piece and more of the funding piece.
If you are a founder who's never fundraised before, please get yourself an advocate, somebody who is totally willing to answer your texts or your calls about the fundraising process. I've been a femtech fundraising advocate for a lot of people, like Francis from Awkward Essentials, and Michella from Oya Leggings, and even Michelle from BioMilk. Like, all of these founders, they have my cell and they say like, hey, we have a term sheet. Is this reasonable? Right. And I'm able to say, based on the industry, yes. Based on the industry, no, or based on trends right now because of COVID or whatever, yes or no. And that's so important, because I have met founders, not those three in particular, but I have met founders saying, oh, this investor is offering me this for this percent equity. And I'm like, run away, away. Like, get away from that human. That is not normal at all. So founders, please don't go it alone. Ask questions, get yourself an advocate, someone who's fundraised a lot, invested a lot, knows the trends. Okay, please. Because we want you to succeed. Yes,
absolutely. We're rooting for you. Feel free to reach out via Twitter. I'm at Model VC. My DMs are open. More than happy to answer questions. And I mean, thank you so much, Brittany, for even just having me here. It's an honor.
My goodness, it's my honor. Thanks, Cheryl. You have been amazing, and I can't wait for more femtech to fundraise on Republic.
I hope so too. Thank you.